Hi, everybody. I'm Tom Shea of The Lively Tradition, and I am here with Alison Miller, one of the candidates for UUA president, and she is the senior minister at the Morristown Unitarian Fellowship in New Jersey. And she is, this is the second interview I've had with Alison, and today we're going to talk about the UUA, social justice, the current political situation, the resistance, and that man in the White House. So what have you been up to? I saw that you had been out to North Dakota. Is that true?
Yes, I did actually respond to the call from Chief Arval Looking Horse for people of faith to come out for an interfaith day of witness on December 4th, and went out a few days in advance to be able to see if I could be of service to the folks that are staying in the camp for the long haul.
Was it a informative?
Very. It was a very powerful experience. The reason that I went is that I feel that we have a responsibility as Unitarian Universalists to pay attention to where environmental degradation and racial oppression are interconnected. And so I feel that's a really compelling time for us to respond and be on the front lines, because it's really a marriage of our first and seventh principle commitments. It was such a powerful experience to really arrive there and to enter into that space, which is like an outdoor temple. I think if you haven't been there, you may not have had that experience. And sadly, of course, it's now been dismantled. It was a place of prayer and ceremony at all times, really all day long. Tribes from around the United States, but all around the world, were sharing traditions with one another. And those of us from other faith traditions were invited to be present and to participate in that unceasing experience of prayer and protest. But the language really that was lifted up was commitment to protecting the water.
Anything else you've done in this post-election resistance period?
It has been a very busy time. We are, and I would say before, people have asked the question about what has changed after the election. And what I'm observing is that it's about the work that we were already committed to, the work of resistance and resilience, and we're experiencing it magnified. So, for example, the Morristown Unitarian Fellowship has been hosting Black Lives Matter Morristown since the summer already, before the election. And we've been working with Muslim community in our county that's been experiencing terrible Islamophobia from the community that they live in. And that heightened in the wake of the elections, but we were already engaged in that work. So, and the same thing with immigrant justice work. Similarly, we were already observing Muslim refugees having a much more challenging time in terms of their cases and in the length of time they stayed in really prisons, what I would call a prison. And that has continued to heighten after the elections. But a lot of these things were already headed in that direction beforehand. And so we've been very much engaged working with partner groups in the community to really strengthen our response and to unite the community, not to pit one group's needs against another group's needs.
So, what do you think Unitarian Universalist congregations ought to be doing at this time in the totality of their programming? Not only their social justice work, but how this relates to community building, internal community building, worship, religious education, faith formation, all of those questions. How do you think this shifts the grounds in which Unitarian Universalist congregations need to be working?
Well, I appreciate, first of all, you asking the question in that way, because I think that our most vibrant congregations that have an impact in the lives of individuals and families and their community are the ones that really look at the needs of their members and their mission holistically. And so I see us as having a special role that's different than a secular social justice nonprofit. That people are coming across our threshold because they're longing for, if they want to engage in justice, spirit-centered justice. They're longing for nourishment. They're longing for a place that stirs their heart and spirit and reminds them about the hope that they're moving towards, the hope of creating the beloved community. So I think actually that spirit, that center of spiritual renewal, that center of that offers us resilience and stories that connect us to one another and to what's happening in the world around us is critical. And in my congregation, and I think in many of our congregations, it's also critical that we have an eye towards including people all across the lifespan in that project. And similarly with community building work, that we have a chance to welcome in our community people of all ages, people coming from diverse, multicultural, multi-faith, and multiracial backgrounds, and that's an important thing that we offer in worship and in our community. And then it's out of our values and our aspirations, collective aspirations, that we feel recharged and re-energized to go out and make a difference and lead lives that are changed, and collectively to change our communities in the direction of more wholeness and more justice.
Yeah, I sometimes I think it's easy to fall into a trap of thinking of our churches as chapters of a social justice organization, a secular nonprofit that, we can get people moving in our get our chapters moving all in the same direction, and then we'll be successful. And I don't think that really gives account for what we are and what it is that we're able to do. I've always thought as a political organization, Unitarian Universalist congregations are really not well suited to be that, right? They can't, they can't agree on whether they have snacks at coffee hour. So, intricate points of foreign policy may be beyond their ability to actually discern. So, go ahead.
Just two things quickly in response to that, because I think that's the other thing is that it's important for us, I think, to develop deeper national strategies for certain issues of justice that we see Unitarian Universalism having a unique voice on around the whole country. But then our contexts are very different. In Morristown, we have 34% Latino immigrants. That's a different context than somewhere else. And we're going to be called into certain kind of work in that context. And I also think, to your point before, is that we can't just be that secular nonprofit. I'm a lifelong Unitarian Universalist, and what I find is that our religious education programs form people committed to justice work in their lives, and they're doing that. And then they come to the congregation on Sunday morning for spiritual renewal, for centering, for a reminder of again, that vision of the beloved community that they're working for. And if the worship life and the religious education life isn't working for them and their families, they disappear. They don't stop doing social justice. They don't have that center that offers them resilience, I think. And I see so many young adults and young families talking about burnout. And so again, I think we offer something powerful when we look at these elements of congregational life in an integrated way.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about self-care, as being a necessity for the activist life. And self-care is not just bubble baths.
No.
To
It's a
me,
good thing for self-care, but it's not our mission.
right? It's, worship is self-care. I mean, to me,
Yes.
worship is self-care. Worship
Yeah.
is community self-care,
Right.
and it's a way in which it's something that we do. That's part of our core mission. That all the other, not all the others, but non-faith-based groups don't do that, and shouldn't be asked to do that. So, what advice or counsel do you see giving as UUA president to our congregations? And how would you deploy the UUA staff to promote a holistic understanding of our mission in this time? How would you see that changing?
So I love this question. And one thing that I would change there are a number of answers, but one thing that stares me in the face is we have 1,000 some odd entities of varying sizes, most of whom I should say, but pretty much all of whom gather for something like a worship on Sunday morning or at some point during the week, that communal spiritual practice we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The Unitarian Universalist Association right now has one 15-hour a week staff person that is devoted to that work. Mm-hmm. So I see a necessary shift there. Number one, I think there's a creative opportunity. I love Worship Web. I love the 15-hour a week work that Erica Hewitt is doing. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I think we need more. This is an opportunity. So many of our sanctuaries now have multimedia capabilities, but don't have the capability to create a video every week. Mm-hmm. So I can imagine the UA furnishing us with a modern sort of hymnal, if you will, resources that we could use in all of our congregations to strengthen that time. I also know that many of our congregations don't have a full-time minister, for example. And so we could have staff who are going out into the field and equipping lay leaders around worship practices and actually both mentoring the lay leaders in various congregations and then also learning from them what's working well and taking that around the country. So that's an obvious shift, I would say, in the staff. I see the president as a spiritual leader. And I think that one thing that I always feel positive about is when our president responds to the crisis that's happening at this time and helps frame it in what it means to us as Unitarian Universalists, and when he is engaging in interfaith partnerships to strengthen our response to what's happening. But I also think there's an opportunity all the time now for the president to reflect on what does resilience look like on an ordinary day? How do we live into some of the challenges around ethical eating, for example? I mean, that's something that takes years of dedication and a lifetime to work. So I think we do a great job, sometimes better than others, but we respond to crises. But what does it look like to create a resilient spiritual movement on an everyday kind of basis? So that shift. As far as the social justice work goes, the UUA has provided real support around public witness with the Standing on the Side of Love campaign. And I think there's an opportunity to grow there. Initially, I was involved in the advisory committee, and there was a vision of it becoming even more interfaith. So what would it look like to invite other leaders to help shape that movement, partners that we want to be working with? And I think there's an opportunity for the president, yes, to be engaged in public witness, but for the president to allocate staff time to a more holistic understanding of social justice. How can our congregations become better at community organizing, education, advocacy, all the things alongside of public witness that strengthen change over the long haul? And the UUA could help in its convening role. Congregations come together and create statewide projects, for example. So I see a lot of opportunity to deepen and broaden the social justice work that we do right now.
It's my sense that that the positioning of our congregations in their communities has to kind of change. That the basic strategy that we've had is that, we grow by creating welcoming communities, somewhat that have kind of a strong boundary around them in some sense, and that we're moving into a case where we're more public religious institutions, and that our worship and our activities may have more people involved from outside our communities than ever before, and that we have to learn how to work in that. And that, our ability to create non-sectarian ritual is something that whole communities need at this point. I just had a vision the other day of a congregation doing a flower ceremony in a park with the entire community, where the entire community is bringing flowers and sharing them back out as a way of celebrating community diversity and unity and solidarity. It's a moving what we used to do inside, moving more of it outside into the situation. So that means that takes some strategic leadership from the UUA to think about in those things. So
and I'll just say, we're doing just that. More and more, the worship is in the congregation, but more and more, we're opening our doors in response to something that's happening, and people are showing up. Some who are curious about Unitarian Universalism, but some because we have a reputation, because of what you're talking about, that we've been real leaders in interfaith and even be broader than interfaith. Moments of meaning making and collecting the community together to mark their grief, to mark their aspirations, and to resolve together, to be united and to create change. And so they've been, I think that's been a powerful part of our ministry over the last 12 years. And we get called all the time to engage in that very role. And so now it goes back and forth. Now more people will show up in our sanctuary when we open it up to the whole community, for example. So I think you're absolutely right. And the UUA can be a real leader. That's part of that mentoring around worship and social justice.
Can I ask you a couple questions about you?
Sure.
Everybody, we all learned in seminary that everybody does theology from a social location.
Yes.
And we have become more adept at talking about how our background, our privilege may blind us to some of the needs for social justice. But I want to flip that question on its head and ask you, what is it in your experience, your life experience, that gives you passion for social justice? What's your core motivation around that part of ministry? And is that at the heart of your ministry, or is that something that's part of the ministry, but the heart of your motivation is around something else, worship, devotion, community building, etc.? Does that give me
It's a great question. So I would say that a number of factors, but one thing that immediately comes to mind I do a lot of work around anti-oppression and anti-racism work in the community. In fact, that was I was involved in the district anti-racism and diversity committee when I felt called out into the community to respond to what was happening around the treatment of immigrants, which was extremely racist. And that comes in part from two things. I think powerful role models, people of color in our movement, who invited me as a young person in the movement into a series of opportunities to listen and learn around what was happening. And those were very powerful experiences for me, to be invited into an awareness of the privilege that I have as a white person, and an awareness of different experiences in the world, and in our Unitarian Universalist world in particular. And I think what but the social location, the thing that readied me for these conversations are experiences of anti-Semitism in my family. And it's interesting because I always say that on matters of race, I identify as having privilege unless I'm in a room with people who dehumanize people who identify as Jewish or have Jewish background, in which case I'm in a different location. And so it very much informs me to have stories from my mother growing up and being checked for horns because she met people that thought that Jews had horns. Or right now, swastikas are being drawn in the middle school right here. And I think the other thing is that people who are part of my family, not just my Unitarian Universalist family, but my immediate family, who are people of color, and feeling the heartbreak around oppression and cycles of oppression and racism, and how that's very clearly adversely affected certain opportunities for them and their children, for example. So these things are very close to my heart. As are class differences. I think last time we spoke, I mentioned that my father's family comes from upper middle class, my mother from lower class. And so those clashes, those faith clashes, those class differences, and I use the word clash because that's how they were experienced. And Unitarian Universalism was a community and place in which we were invited to celebrate and honor that diversity, not by glossing over it, by understanding it. And that was a really powerful experience for me, that I could bring many different parts of myself and then see that other people could do the same. We don't always live up to that, but we, I think, always have a mission to embody the beloved community. So those things really, I would say, played a strong role in growing up Unitarian Universalist and in my direct experience in a city as well, I should say.
Yeah.
So it's different because of where you are located in the United States or around the world as well.
Well, you reveal much, and that we thank you for that. One last question. Oh, I actually have one real question and one yes or no question.
Sure.
The first question is like, you come into a room and there's a dozen people in there and you're all working together to do some great thing. What role do you play in that room? Are you the smartest one in the room? Are you the most passionate? Are you the conciliator? Are you the prophet? What's your preferred role of leadership?
So I love that question, and I'll say this: I'm going to push against all those as necessarily separate. So I would say that I play the role of being somebody that is committed to that vision of the beloved community, and that wants to really listen to the different experiences of the people in the room. I play a real role of a facilitator and a convener. And listening to those differences and then actually helping people see the conflicts that's inherent in the room and inviting us into a place of generativity and creativity, that these conflicts can actually help us hear what's happening through different windows, if you will, and that by really paying attention to what's in the room, we can make a wiser decision than any one of us can alone. So I would say a real convening and facilitating role. And then really, I think it's from that place, both that sense of vision and having listened to where people fall in that vision and what their experiences are and how the vision is made richer for listening to how people experience that. Then really the prophetic comes in, which is, okay, this is where we are. This is where I see a disconnect between what we say we value and how we're acting. And let's create a plan to move forward to what will get us closer to that vision of the beloved community, and then really urging the inspirer, I would say. To your last question, worship is so important to me because it's the place where we gather for inspiration in order to actually lead lives of love and actually turn out into the world. So after the worship, the service begins. But so again, in these communities, really somebody who is an inspirer, a gatherer, a convener, and someone that is able to, has been reflected back to me many times, move the community forward. Granted, there's always some people that don't want to move. And I think that's where the prophetic comes in. You have to be willing to challenge some people, and they may not want to come on that journey. But the journey is made more powerful, I think, by including as many people as possible.
Great. That's very interesting. Very interesting. One last question, yes
Sure.
or no answer.
Sure.
Has anybody, or you in your campaign, been in touch with Russian intelligence?
No.
Okay.
But I would be happy to talk with Unitarian Universalists anywhere around the globe, and actually would be delighted to glean from their wisdom.
Well, on that note, I think we'll bring this interview to a close. Thank you, Alison, for spending this time with us. I think you've, I hope people have gotten a little closer look at you and how you think and what you care about as we go forward to this UUA presidency election. So this is Tom Shade for The Lively Tradition, signing off. Look for interviews with Jean Pupke and Susan Frederick Gray on similar subjects coming up in the next few weeks. So thank you.